Well, it's in the vicinity of the space station and attached to the space station. So that was a huge learning curve for crew. We human rated a spacecraft for a portion of the mission, and then for crew, you just have to obviously expand it for the whole mission. And then the last part was Cargo Dragon has been this amazing test bed for commercial crew. And what that means is we were able to test out like heat shield materials and parachute materials on Cargo Dragon before they ever flew on Crew Dragon.
Very cool. And that's just one part of the equation. Lars, walk us through, again, just the flight history of Falcon 9 from the humble beginnings to where we are today.
Well, Falcon 9 first flew almost 10 years ago today. And even though the first version of that rocket couldn't carry humans, the fundamental design was made with that goal in mind. Over the course of 87 launches, we've steadily improved the rocket so that now it has twice the payload to orbit that we started out with. We can land and reuse the first stage in the fairing, and most importantly for today, we have the reliability that we need for humans. Now, what's interesting is that that reliability has come from steady upgrades and almost a decade of flight experience. But it's actually quite hard to prove reliability. This is something that the commercial airline industry has been grappling with for decades. And just like them, we rely on lots and lots of testing. So for instance, if you take the Merlin 1D engine, that has to fly for about 6 minutes continuously to get to orbit. We took one of those and ran it for more than 250 minutes to get the statistical proof of reliability that we need. So it's that testing and lots of analysis that gives us and NASA the confidence that Falcon is ready to fly humans for the first time.
And obviously a lot of additional upgrades, a lot of additional testing had to go just to make sure that both of these vehicles were human rated. So walk us through some of the specific upgrades to Dragon to meet that criteria.
Yep. So the first one's pretty obvious. We had a Cargo Dragon. It has lots of cargo cubbies, so we took all of those out, replaced it with astronaut seats, crew displays, and crew controls. But one thing that people may not know is on Cargo Dragon, we've actually been flying mice to and from the International Space Station for years. And what that meant was we had to design an environmental control and life support system for Dragon years ago. It provides oxygen, it scrubs carbon dioxide, and among other things, it controls temperature and relative humidity. So even though that was done on a smaller scale for mice, it was a great learning curve on how to help man-rate a spacecraft when you have to do it for humans.
And then, Lars, same question. What kind of specific upgrades had to go into it to certify Falcon 9 for this day?
Well, I already mentioned the reliability upgrades. One upgrade that I think is particularly interesting is the launch abort trigger. So people probably know that Dragon has the ability in mid-flight to separate from Falcon and boost the astronauts away to safety in the case that there's some kind of emergency. And that could be triggered by the astronauts or by the ground crew. What people may not know is that Falcon itself has the ability to cause that trigger, and it will do that entirely autonomously using algorithms, software, and sensors. And that's particularly important in the case of a time-critical fault where aborting quickly means aborting safely. And in some cases, Falcon can do this quicker than 3/10 of a second, so much faster than a human.
And Lars, I'm going to pause right there for a sec. We're getting some comm from the crew. And so coming up shortly, we're going to hear these communication checks. Bob and Doug are going to be talking to several positions down on the ground, and they're going to be using both communication speakers inside of Dragon and inside their suits in a series of communications checks. They're also going to be doing these checks over different satellites and ground stations.
CDR, PLT, comm check, umbilical.
CDR, loud and clear. PLT, loud and clear.
Core, loud and clear. Umbilical comm check complete. Stand by for ground station comm check.
And you'll hear him referred to CDR as Doug Hurley, that's the commander, PLT pilot, that's Bob Bankin. And so that first one we heard was through the umbilical, so that communication linked directly into their suit. Now they're going to do a communication check over the ground stations. We'll also hear one over TDRS, that's the Tracking and Data Relay Satellites. Same satellites we use to talk to the International Space Station. That's what we'll be using to talk and track Dragon throughout its entire flight. So again, just waiting for a moment for the teams to continue configuring everything. They're going to do these ground checkouts now, and you're going to be hearing them talk directly to the core. It's the crew operations responsible engineer. That's essentially the Capcom if you followed NASA missions in the past. It's a position right here in Hawthorne at SpaceX Mission Control, which is just a few feet away from us, where the team's going to be watching over Bob and Doug for their entire flight. That's where the main person whose job it is to talk to them is going to be sitting. We'll also hear them do some checkouts with the launch director down there at the Cape inside firing room 4. And you'll be hearing those very characteristic beeps.
Dragon SpaceX contract.
SpaceX Dragon, weak but readable.
Copy. We have you the same. Stand by. We're still configuring for ground station contract.
Dragon copy.
And just to further explain some of those voice protocols that you're going to hear, you might be used to hearing Houston Station or Houston Shuttle or Houston Endeavor back when we were flying those specific shuttles. You're going to hear SpaceX Dragon. That's the SpaceX team calling the Dragon team on orbit. And then Bob and Doug will be able to respond. And so they're going to continue to configure. We'll get these ground station checkouts momentarily. And just a reminder, you're going to hear that very unique beeping sound. That's called a quindar, and that's been something that's been used throughout space-to-ground or air-to-ground communications throughout spaceflight history, and that's really just for teams who are in mission control or supporting a launch know when you hear that sound, it's time to listen.
Dragon SpaceX comm check ground station.
Dragon has you loud and clear, much better, Jay.
And core loud and clear. Ground station comm check complete. Stand by for TDRS comm check. Dragon SpaceX comm check TDRS.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear.
Core loud and clear. TDRS comm check complete. Stand by for checks with MD, LD in the launch configuration.
Dragon MD on countdown 1, comm check.
Jason, we've got you loud and clear. How you doing?
Doing great. How you guys doing in there? Stand by for comm checks.
Great day to launch a spaceship.
Agree. And stand by for comm checks over Dragon to ground. Dragon MD on Dragon to ground, comm check.
Loud and clear.
MD loud and clear. Stand by for comm checks with LD.
Dragon, launch director on countdown 1, comm check.
Mike, we've got you loud and clear. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Let me try on Dragon to ground 1. Dragon, SpaceX launch director on Dragon to ground 1, comm check.
Loud and clear.
Have you the same?
Dragon SpaceX launch configuration comm checks are complete. Report when ready for seat rotation per section 2 of 4.100.
SpaceX Dragon, we're ready for seat rotation.
Copy, ready for seat rotation. We will report when initiating.
All right, so that wraps up those communications checks. Everything going good with the spacecraft, Bob and Doug talking to the teams on the ground. Pretty soon they're going to get their seats rotated. Bringing you back inside Hawthorne real quick, I do want to thank Jessica and Lars for joining me real quick, giving us that great insight into Dragon and Falcon 9. Hope you guys got a good spot staked out to watch the launch today. It's great to have you on.
Absolutely.
Super excited.
So we're going to throw it now down to Gary Jordan at Mission Control Houston, who I know is also following along. Over to you, Gary.
Thanks, Dan. Great to hear good checks from Bob and Doug in the Dragon vehicle. Here in Mission Control Houston, Flight Director Zeb Scoville has pulled space station flight controllers, and all systems are go for launch. Essentially, the station is prepared for Dragon to arrive 19 hours after launch. Flight controllers here will continue to monitor the countdown, but really it's up to the teams in Kennedy and Hawthorne to get us to liftoff at this point. So we want to hear your comments as we continue to count down to launch, so let's go to the social desk now. Tahira.
Thanks, Gary. So taking a quick look at those numbers right now, there are now 1 million people watching our coverage, and Launch America is up to the #1 trending hashtag on Twitter. So let's take a closer look at what's being said online. Okay, so right now we have Art Alexandria, and it looks like she's got a personal self-portrait, cosmic for sure, in her NASA flight suit. And guys, this is what I'm loving seeing online with this hashtag, is how everyone around the nation is making this launch uniquely theirs. And I want to point out one line in her post that says, "I believe that no matter how far the future is, we are on our way towards it." And guys, I couldn't have said it better myself. That's what today represents. Let's take another look. Oh my goodness. Okay, so right now we have Jessica with her space pup getting ready for liftoff. And guys, I'm not gonna lie, we love to see it. So please, if you have any space pets, comment using hashtag #LaunchAmerica. As you can see, everybody is thrilled to be a part of this launch today, and I know of one special guest in particular. I'm so pleased to welcome Diana Cohort of Physics Girl. Diana, I hear you have a burning question for Mission Control, so go for it.
Hi, Tahira. Thank you so much for including me on this incredibly special day. I'm Diana from the YouTube channel Physics Girl, and I've always been so fascinated by space and especially space exploration because we bring together so many people for such a complicated task to send a rocket up into space. So my question is along the lines of what goes into a mission like that? What we all know, I think we're familiar with how much preparation and training astronauts have to do, but preparing for a mission like this, and maybe preparing in the future for a mission to the moon or to Mars, what kinds of things does the whole team have to do in order to prepare to launch a rocket?
So Diana, that is such a great question because, I mean, sometimes I think it does get overlooked what all goes into making a moment like this happen. So Gary, what has the team there in Mission Control been doing to prepare for this historic launch?
Thanks, Tahira. And Diana, that's a fantastic question. Really, the operations here are not just starting today. There has been a lot of training and a lot of simulations that have been going into preparing for this moment. Really preparing and getting everyone familiarized with every step of the mission, from launch all the way through docking, and throwing different scenarios at them just in case something were to happen. Every flight controller you see behind me will be prepared to respond effectively. Now, I do want to make a shout out that it's not just the flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston that have dedicated so much time to this launch. In fact, I've been talking to Zeb Scoville, the flight director here in Mission Control Houston, who said that even before he was a flight director back in 2014, they were working on some of the operations for commercial crew missions. But really, this team expands across the country. You've already seen a lot of people working in Hawthorne, in Florida, in Houston, and really it takes an integrated and dedicated team to make a mission like this possible. Diana, thank you so much for the question. And really thanks to everyone sending in questions and for sharing in this historic mission today. Remember, as you're posting, to use the hashtag #LaunchAmerica. I do want to make a shout out to the flight controllers here in Mission Control Houston. In fact, some traditional flowers have been sent to Mission Control Houston. This dates even back before the Shuttle days for every mission to dedicate it to the operations and the controllers here who are working so closely and are integrated in every part of the mission. But Now let's head over to Hawthorne for the latest status on the crew and on Dragon. Dan.
All right, thank you, Gary. As you can see, Bob and Doug in a little bit different position now. Their suits have been rotated to the launch position. So this just puts their backs a little bit more horizontal with the ground itself, or parallel with the ground itself, and places those displays directly in front of them. We've also already moved into suit leak checks, so this is the second time they've had these leak checks done in their suit. So pressurized nitrox now flowing into those launch and entry suits that they're going to be wearing throughout the dynamic phases of this mission. So right now we are under 2 hours and 20 minutes from launch. We're about 2 hours and 18 minutes and counting from liftoff of the Falcon 9 from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida. It's going to be carrying our NASA crew members today, Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken, aboard SpaceX's Dragon spacecraft. It's been a really exciting day so far. We're fighting against that weather, but we're continuing to press on for launch. The crew has been up since about 6 a.m. as they prepare to head to the International Space Station for part of this Demo 2 mission for NASA.
Yeah, and as you can see on your screen, it looks like they're just waiting and getting ready for this mission today. It's been such an exciting day so far. Again, as Dan said, their seats are rotated into launch position so that they can see those screens that you see there on the left side right in front of them. Their suit leak checks have been complete. Their comm checks are complete. So let's throw it over to Lauren in KSC.
All right, so Dragon hatch close is expected at T-minus 1 hour and 55 minutes, and we are just pretty close to that. It's getting really, really close. So this is one of the final key visual milestones on that timeline to lift off, the closure of that hatch and locking Bob and Doug inside. Now, we have a couple of special guests joining us with Daryl at the OSB-2 viewing location. That's NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine and SpaceX Chief Engineer Elon Musk. Daryl?
That's right, Lauren. We're here on the 5th floor. We were supposed to be outside on the balcony overlooking pad 39A, but we have come indoors due to the weather. But we are here with two titans of space. And though it might look like this is a reunion of a 90s boy band, it is not. We are socially distanced for good reason. But we are here to talk about space. And I want to thank you both and tell you both it's a privilege and honor to be with you today. We're going to start off with you, Jim, and ask you a couple questions here. I want to ask you, first of all, it's been almost 3 years that you were sworn in as NASA Administrator, and you knew from the very first day that you would be right here at the Kennedy Space Center in this moment when a commercial partner was ready to launch. Tell me what it's like to be leading NASA at this very moment.
So I want to be clear. I did not know that when I got sworn in. I will tell you, a lot of folks said it couldn't be done. But of course, as soon as I got the job, Elon and I have had a number of conversations. Elon committed that this was something that SpaceX could achieve. We've had challenges. We've had setbacks. We've seen catastrophic losses of capsules and challenges with parachutes. What's that? On the ground, uncrewed. I want to be really clear. Tests. But that's what's unique about SpaceX. SpaceX can do things that NASA historically has not done. They test, they fail, they fix, they fly, they test, they fail, they fix, they fly, until the point where we are today, where not only is SpaceX comfortable, but NASA is comfortable. We are ready to go. But if you would have told me even 2 years ago we'd be right here, I might have even been questioning it then. But this is a monumental achievement. It's a Herculean task by the SpaceX team, which we're very grateful for, and also by the NASA team that has been working hand in glove with them to get to this point.
And it's good we have Jim and Elon both here to fact check each other, so that's good. Thank you for that. Elon, in 2002, when you started SpaceX, many in the aerospace industry didn't take SpaceX seriously. You remember what that felt like. Yet here you are. You just sent 2 astronauts in a car made by your car company to launch pad 39A with a spacecraft made by your space company. And now they're launching the International Space Station. So I'm wondering for you, in this moment, do you just pinch yourself thinking, is this really happening?
This is a dream come true, I think, for me and everyone at SpaceX. This is not something that I ever thought would actually happen. So when starting SpaceX in 2002, I really did not think this day would occur. I expected 90% chance we'd fail to even get to low Earth orbit with a small rocket. So somebody told me in 2002 that I'd be standing here with the NASA administrator, meeting the astronauts, and we've got a rocket and spacecraft on pad 39A, the best pad in the world, which is it's an honor to be there. I would have thought, man, I don't know what you're smoking, but it's not. like no way is that true. You know, and so it is. Say it's even a dream come true. I didn't even dream that this would come true. Let me put it that way. You know, but it is. I am incredibly excited to be here on behalf of the SpaceX team. And as Jim said, this really is the culmination of an incredible amount of work by the SpaceX team, by NASA, and by a number of other partners in the process of making this happen. It's really, you can look at this as the result of 100,000 people, roughly, when you add up all suppliers and everyone, working incredibly hard to make this day happen. So it's really hard to believe that this is real.
And you're here, and it's amazing, and many of us have been amazed as we've watched you accomplish these things over the years. Jim, back to you. This is all about the commercialization of space. And so in the early going for Commercial Crew Program, it wasn't something NASA was used to. You know, Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, Shuttle, NASA gave the designs and the contractors went out there and built it. This is different.
It is.
They're building it now. What were some of the hurdles that you had to overcome to get to this point?
Well, I think getting people to recognize that when the government provides both the demand and the supply, you're limited in what you're able to do. And of course, back when this program was initiated under Charlie Bolden, General Charlie Bolden, astronaut Charlie Bolden, Congress was not supportive and did not provide the proper funding. And yet he persevered. He pushed forward. And now I think everybody recognizes we have to commercialize space. We've had success now with commercial resupply of the International Space Station. Now we've got commercial crew to the International Space Station. Eventually we need commercial space stations. So what we're using the International Space Station for right now, we're proving that we can compound pharmaceuticals in a way that you cannot do on Earth. We're able to create immunizations in a way you cannot do on Earth. We're printing human organs in 3D. Right now it's just tissue, but eventually we're going to print human organs in 3D using adult stem cells, your skin cells, your own DNA. It's going to transform how we do medicine here on Earth. We're creating advanced materials that you can only create in the microgravity of space, things like an artificial retina for the human eye. So if you have macular degeneration, you don't have to lose your eyesight. Bottom line is this: these markets are the future. And when they materialize, and they are materializing because of the work of NASA, we're going to see capital investment, not just into launch, but also into habitation. And that ultimately is what's going to be transformational for commercial space.
Very good. And Elon, in getting all of that going, the ISS and all the activity that takes place on board, it's key that this Crew Dragon operate on a regular basis. As the chief engineer, what were some of the biggest hurdles you had to overcome to get your spacecraft ready to fly this mission?
Well, the spacecraft and the rocket have gone through literally thousands and thousands of tests and reviews, both by SpaceX, by NASA, by third parties. We've also, as Jim was alluding to, we've done a lot of flights. So one of the things I think that's very helpful about this flight, about what we're about to do, is that the rocket has flown many times. Mm-hmm. In fact, even in this, essentially this configuration, it's flown about 20 times. Mm. So that means we really have, I don't want to tempt fate, but a well-proven rocket. And we've flown Crew Dragon to the space station once successfully and brought it back. We've done a tremendous amount of testing on the ground, and when you do the testing on the ground, you always push the limits. Mm-hmm. So you want to try, you push it way beyond what you'd expect in flight. So sometimes you'd break it because you kind of want to break it on the ground during testing to see what the limits are. Mm-hmm. So this is a result, like I said, of thousands of tests, of thousands of design hours, and a tremendous number of smart people working incredibly hard to make this day happen.
And you've got 2 astronauts on board now.
Yes.
Do you feel that responsibility?
Yes, absolutely. I felt it, I think, most strongly when I saw their family just before coming here.
And did you say anything that you can share?
So we've done everything we can to make sure your dad's come back okay.
Thanks for sharing that with us. Jim, you had some words with the astronauts. What was your take on how they were feeling?
I will tell you, Doug Hurley, Marine Corps test pilot, of course, veteran of multiple space shuttle missions. Bob Benkin, flight test engineer, United States Air Force, again, veteran of multiple space shuttle missions. This is not new to these guys. All I could do is convey to them how much all of America appreciates what they're doing, that the entire world is watching, and just how grateful we are as a nation. And I will tell you, their demeanor is loose. They are ready to go. They were joking around. They're talking about what they had for breakfast and how it might come up later. It was
steak and eggs. Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Right. So it was nice to see. They are in their element, and we are just so grateful and proud of them.
Well, that's good to hear. That gives you great confidence, I'm sure, in your positions as you hear that. We're going to go to a social media question, and we've got this question coming from Brooklyn. And she wants to know, I noticed some changes in the crew spacesuits. They look much thinner and lighter. What changes in the space capsule allow to have these futuristic suits?
Well, we spent a lot of time designing the spacesuit. I personally spent a lot of time on the spacesuits. It took us 3, almost 4 years to design suits that both look good and work well. So you can see a spacesuit in the movie, looks good, doesn't work. and then you can make a spacesuit that works but doesn't look good. Because fundamentally it's a pressure suit that's got to survive in vacuum.
Right.
So it's so it tends to puff up, when it's under pressure, and it's got to handle all that pressure. So it took us many iterations to get the suit to. We really wanted to look great. Fundamentally, what it's about is like we want to inspire kids to say that one day they want to wear that uniform. They want to wear that spacesuit, and get them fired up about, I want to be an astronaut. I want to work on aerospace engineering. I want to advance space flight. And I think what today is about is reigniting the dream of space, and getting people fired up about the future and excited. It's just one of those things that I think everyone. From all walks of life, from all parts of the political spectrum, in the United States and elsewhere, should be really excited that this is a thing that is made by humans, for humans, and it's just a great, exciting, inspiring day, and it's one of those things that makes you glad to wake up in the morning.
Yeah. Functional and inspiring. And there's one on a model right over there, and you got me so excited. I might run over there and put that thing on, Elon.
Yeah. They're custom tailored, by the way. I think you won't fit in that one, but we could make one that you would fit in.
Well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, because I'm 6'8", so you're gonna have to do a lot of sewing.
Well, and the Dragon spacecraft can take someone who's 6'8".
My size.
Yes.
This commercial thing, I'm getting excited.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm ready to fly, Jim.
Yeah.
Sir.
We've got another social media question we're going to ask. Ashton J wants to know, how do you think that launching astronauts on American soil for the first time since 2011 will revolutionize future missions?
Yeah, so what we're doing here is unlike anything we've ever done before. We are not purchasing, owning, and operating the hardware. We are turning to commercial industry. And going back to the spacesuits, it's the same for the capsule, it's the same for the rocket. We did not tell industry what to build. We gave them top-level requirements. We said, here's the requirement for payload. Here's the requirement for safety. And then we let the innovators, commercial industry, American commercial industry, innovate, and they came up with solutions that had never been dreamed of before, and that's the success of this program. So we're really revolutionizing how we do spaceflight, and I really think when we look into the future, we're going to see these models of doing business with public-private partnerships apply not just to low Earth orbit, which is what we're doing today, but we're taking this model to the moon and even onto Mars.
And I hear something about Tom Cruise shooting a movie at the International Space Station. Is that right?
I'll tell you what I told Elon just yesterday, and that is this. People ask me about Tom Cruise all the time now, and the answer is yes. We would love Tom Cruise to fly to the International Space Station and make a movie. I'm all for that, and we're going to do what we can to make that happen. But you should know this. There was a day when I was in elementary school, and I saw the movie Top Gun. And from that day, I knew that I was going to be a Navy pilot. It's just the way it was. The goal here, and this is what we're doing today.
Exactly.
And Elon is all about this.
Get the kids fired up about wanting to wear that spacesuit.
That's exactly
wanting to
right.
fly that. Go to orbit, go to the moon, go to Mars, reigniting the dream of space, and just getting people of all walks of life, young, old, excited about the future. Excited. I think anyone who has within them the spirit of exploration should love what's going on today.
And if we can get Tom Cruise to inspire an elementary kid to join the Navy and be a pilot, why can't we get Tom Cruise to inspire the next Elon Musk? That's what we need. We need a new generation of many Elon Musks, and that's what this launch is about today. I want to say, speaking of this inspiration piece, it's not by chance that we have the Secretary of Education of the United States of America here. This is all about the next generation. If we have great success in our generation, it's not enough. It has to continue. The challenge with the Apollo program is that it ended. What we're doing now is sustainable, and that's why we have the public-private partnerships and commercial capabilities that are coming online.
Very good. And the good news for Tom Cruise is he does a lot of his own stunts.
Yeah.
So in zero gravity, he should get hurt a lot less.
I think it's going to be super cool.
Yeah.
And as Joe said, it's like this is going to, you want to capture the public imagination, have them see cool things happening in real orbit, real space stations. It's like I think I'd want to watch that movie.
Yeah.
And it's like I said, you think of this like this is really just the beginning, because we want to go from low Earth orbit, we want to go back to the moon, and the moon to stay, have a moon base like Moon Base Alpha, and have build a city on Mars and be a spacefaring civilization out there among the stars. This is a super exciting future that I think that's the kind of thing where you're like, can't wait for it to happen.
If you can't get excited after listening to you guys, I'd say you need to have your pulse checked.
Yeah.
Elon Musk, SpaceX CEO and Chief Engineer, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jim Bridenstine, we appreciate you leading NASA in this time, Administrator for the agency. And we're going to send it back to Marie.
All right, thanks a lot, Daryl. We saw in the meantime, while that interview was going on, the hatch actually closed. So that happened a few minutes earlier than we expected to. Our timeline has that happening at T-minus an hour and 55 minutes. So a few minutes ahead of schedule right now with hatch closed. And you can see the pad teams there just working on things now.
Yeah, right now it looks like what they're doing is, what are they doing? So they perform a leak check. There's a mechanism there called a side hatch mechanism. That is what actually closes the hatch and seals it. And what we'll do is perform a leak check on that for a few minutes to make sure that that's nice and tight, that those O-rings are sealed really, really well. And after that, we will install the, you can see the leak check ground support equipment there in the technician's hands there.
And while we're watching this, Leland, I mean, we just heard them talk a lot about inspiring the next generation. And you're a man of many talents. I know after your flights yourself, you used to head the head of NASA education. I mean, what did that stir up in you?
Marie, what Elon said about reigniting the dream of space is so important, that we get our young kids thinking about themselves being in these seats. And when I first became an astronaut in 1998, I was riding on the back of a fire truck celebrating John Glenn's return to flight on a space shuttle. And I saw these two little kids. They had on orange pumpkin suits. And when their dad turned them around to look at me on the fire truck. And it was almost as though when they saw my face, they started launching into space with rocket fuel because they were inspired, because they saw someone who looked like them. And I think that if we can reignite this dream through SpaceX's launch, through the partnership with NASA, we can get so many more kids to believe in themselves and know that they can be just like Doug and Bob flying on the SpaceX Dragon.
Absolutely. I mean, it's really just breathtaking to see them there in their suits now and looking at the screens in front of them. Lauren, I know we've talked a lot about the spacecraft. We've heard about that. But for folks that maybe are just tuning in, what are they looking at in front of them now?
Yeah, so they have 3 different touch screens in front of them. Overall, that whole assembly there is called the control panel. So you'll have those 3 LCD touch screens in front of them where they have, the displays are showing them details on the vehicle's pressure, its temperature, there's audio control. That center screen has the procedures that they're going through today on day of launch. You can also see the vehicle's attitude. You can see its velocity, its apogee, its perigee, its inclination, details on the status of the hatch, the thermal control system loops, basically all the cool stuff that helps them have situational awareness of the vehicle. That's displayed on those displays. Additionally, there are some actual buttons on that button panel that you see down below. And some of the things that allow them to do is if the crew ever needed to do any sort of manual overrides like that right in the middle, right underneath that center LCD screen, that's the crew's ability to initiate an abort. It's called an abort handle, and it's right in the middle where both crew members could use it if they needed to. And the audio controls are also on those button panels. When they're not in their suits, there's actually speakers that are coming off of the control panel that allow them to hear mission control, hear the core, hear ISS, when they're not in their suits where the audio systems are integrated into that.
And we see them using the touch screens now. Leland, what's your take on this? Because this has got to look totally different from what you were looking at during Shuttle.
Touch screens. We had these displays and these buttons, and it was one of those moments when I'm looking at this now when I had knee boards that had procedures and things on there, and the procedures are now all run in that middle screen, and the malfunctions and the things that you do to mitigate problems with the vehicle if something happens, it's all controlled right there with the two of them. And so it's a radical departure from what we did with the Shuttle, but it's again ushering in this new era of space travel.
For post-ingress brief and a check on how that suit air feels about now.
And we're going to listen now for an announcement
We're ready.
about hatch closer.
Copy. Well, today we are not tracking any issues on Dragon and F9 currently. For a weather update, the weather line that is overhead, which is what you saw when you were ingressing, is now moving offshore. The next radar return is a cell over Orlando, which is expected to be our decision gate for today, and that is currently eroding.
That's good news. Thank you.
Copy. And then one additional item, the Cabo, the orbit site, remains as briefed, so no change there. But I do want to make you aware that that is slightly west of Cabo for go weather. So you just want to target the longitude if needed.
Okay, Dragon copy, slightly west. We'll target the longitude, and the suit air has cooled off, so we appreciate that as well.
Copy, outstanding. Let us know if you have any questions, and we'll keep you posted as the closeout team completes the leak check.
Dragon copy.
So what we actually heard was a little bit more discussion about the weather, still looking at things, and we're about a minute away from an announcement about hatch closure. Excuse me. If you're just joining us, we're at T-minus 1 hour, 55 minutes and counting, and we're expecting an announcement to confirm hatch closure in just a few seconds.
Dragon, SpaceX, for comm checks with Falcon 9.
Go ahead.
Okay, we are ready for that at that time, if you are ready.
We are ready.
All stations up on countdown net for section 54.49, F9 responsible engineer, communication check with the crew. Start with guidance, navigation, and control.
Dragon GNC on countdown 1, comm check.
GNC Dragon, loud and clear.
GNC loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the propulsion engineer.
Dragon, prop on countdown 1, comm check.
Prop Dragon, loud and clear.
Prop, loud and clear. Stand by for comm check with the avionics engineer.
Dragon, avionics on countdown 1, comm check.
Avionics Dragon, we have good loud and clear.
Avionics loud and clear. Stand by for comm check with the ground segment engineer.
Dragon, ground segment on countdown 1, comm check.
Ground segment Dragon, loud and clear.
Ground segment loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by launch control.
Dragon, launch control on countdown 1, comm check.
Launch control Dragon, loud and clear.
Launch control loud and clear. Stand by for comm check by the chief engineer.
Dragon, chief engineer on countdown 1, comm check.
Bala, Dragon has you loud and clear.
Chief engineer, loud and clear. This completes the F9 responsible engineer comm checks. Dragon, chief engineer on Dragon to ground.
Go ahead, sir.
I was just doing a comm check on this loop. Good luck, guys, and buckle in.
Thanks to you and the F9 team, Bala. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bala.
So we just heard a series of comm checks there, and Lauren, I don't know if you want to describe a little bit more about why that's important, and we heard the acronym GNC. They said guidance, navigation, and control really quickly, and then went back to the acronym GNC. Can you kind of explain to folks what that means?
Yeah, the launch chief engineer, Bala, as you heard them thanking him towards the end, initiated a comm check with all of the different subsystems that those engineers that are on console and those operators today, and talking with the crew, making sure that they were able to communicate with them bidirectionally, and just handing that check off from all of the different stations on console today. That was really, really cool. We obviously don't do that when there's a satellite on top of the rocket, so this is the first time for a real flight that we've done that operation. It's very awesome.
And now that the hatch is closed, a lot of the work of this team is done, but I mean they're obviously not finished. They're not ready to leave the white room just yet. You were talking to some folks about what's going on in this room now.
Yeah, that's right. They should be completing the hatch leak check. You sort of pressurize that area between, there's two O-rings that are there, and we want to pressurize that area, see if it holds pressure. It's a very, very sensitive test, very high criteria for passing. And so once that leak check is shown to be okay, and that the capsule or that those O-rings are able to hold pressure, what the team will do is they'll go back into that area, into that access panel, and install what we call the SPEP, which is the side pressure equalization plug. Once that is plugged, you've really closed everything up, and when the crew splashes down, what they'll actually do is pull that plug to equalize pressure across the hatch so that you don't cause the hatch to buckle due to a pressure, the hatch or the capsule, the weldment, any of the vehicle to buckle due to a pressure differential. So they should be adding that plug, and then they'll cover up that side hatch access panel with the TPS panel or thermal protection system panel, close it up, and that'll make sure it stays safe on ascent.
And now, obviously, we're looking at a view from the outside, the top of Falcon 9 and Crew Dragon.
We can confirm a good side hatch leak check.
Dragon copies, good leak check.
And we just heard confirmation of a good leak check. If you're just joining us, you're looking at the Falcon 9 rocket with Crew Dragon sitting on top. Inside that capsule on top are NASA astronauts Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley. And we are inside of 2 hours until liftoff, if the weather holds up. There's another stunning aerial view of the crew access arm extended out towards Crew Dragon. That is the final path that the astronauts took to climb aboard Dragon before they strapped into their seats and the hatch closed. And no doubt Bob and Doug are focused on the mission ahead, but you know, we also heard the administrator and Elon Musk talking about how they've been kind of jovial and joking around. And Leland, you kind of mentioned to me during that segment that that's really important.
It really is, Marie. When we were in the vehicle, after we got to this point when the hatch was closed, we were all going back to those moments of our training, you know, when we were going through, you know, ascent and entry training on the shuttle and just different phases of flight that we would be going through. And we would think about some of our instructors who got us there. You know, in our crew notebooks, we would have names of people that were very impactful in making sure that we were perfect in our training. And
that looks like a view of Air Force One. Flying near Launch Pad 39A for a special guest to have a special view of the astronauts on the launch pad. President Trump on board, making his way to Kennedy Space Center to hopefully view a launch at 4:33 this afternoon. And there they are in view of the launch pad, so no doubt he's looking at the window, looking out the window at Bob and Doug on the pad. That's got to be an amazing sight to see from on board Air Force One. And we are at T-minus 1 hour, 46 minutes, 22 seconds and counting from launch. And guys, the last time we actually did a little bit of research when we found out that the president was coming. The last president to witness a launch from here at Kennedy Space Center was Bill Clinton. That was back in October 1998 for STS-95. So it's been a minute.
Okay, and we are about 56 seconds away from the, oh, no, we're not. We have an hour and 56 seconds away. Never mind. Instead, we are 1 hour and 45 minutes away from launch. And Tahira, you are there with the social teams. I bet you are seeing some excitement on all the things we just saw on the screen there.
Hey, Lauren, I mean, like you said, things are really ramping up on social media right now, especially seeing that hatch close and also just watching this flyover happen. We are up to 1.7 million viewers across all of our social media channels. And let's check out what people are saying on Twitter right now. So it looks like we've got more creativity still going on. Some people are crying with pride in Houston, feel it. We even have Elizabeth Banks, who from the Hunger Games. That's awesome. We have more just good luck and well wishes for Bob and Doug across the nation. This has been a constant online today, which is so great to see. More just future astronauts and kiddos getting excited. We even have the band Bastille tuning in for launch. This is awesome. And just looks like more people standing by to witness this historic launch today. And so, guys, on top of what's being said on social media, we've also got a lot of well wishes from everyone across our country showing us what today means in their creative way. So let's take a look at that video.
I am so ready to launch America.
This baking soda rocket, and I'm gonna launch it.
Wow, I mean, guys, just look at everybody excited for today's launch. If that doesn't get you pumped, like, come on, let's go. We even got to see astronaut Snoopy in there, which is a personal favorite of mine. I actually have my lucky Snoopy pin here. You probably can't see it, but he is literally my spirit animal. Anyways, guys, get excited. The time is almost here. And with that, let's toss back to Lauren at Kennedy. Lauren.
Thanks, Tahira. Tahira likes the Snoopy. I like the little girl doing the worm, Leland. She wasn't doing the meatball. She was doing the worm.
There's someone out there doing the meatball, I'm sure.
I want to know what that looks like.
No, I don't. I don't. Clearly, this is capturing the attention of people all across the country and the world. So please continue to join the conversation by using the hashtag #LaunchAmerica across Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Instagram.
And we've had the opportunity to share with you a lot about the SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle the crew is sitting in right now, a lot about the crew themselves and the significance of today as the official return of human launch capability to American shores. And now we want to turn our attention to where the crew is going, the International Space Station. And for that, let's take you to Mission Control in Houston. Gary?
Thank you, Marie. The International Space Station is an incredible facility whose construction, operation, and ongoing science, all these efforts have been made possible by an unprecedented international collaboration. So to tell us more about the space station, we have International Space Station Chief Scientist Kurt Costello with us. Kurt, welcome.
Gary, thank you. It's an amazing day to be here to talk to you about this historic launch to the ISS.
It really is. Now, many viewers may not realize that there is a laboratory that's the size of a football field, 250 miles above the Earth, and that it's been there for nearly 20 years conducting revolutionary science. Can you share with us more about what the space station is and what it's accomplished so far?
Sure, Gary. Over those 20 years, we've conducted over 3,100 experiments on board this space station. Those 3,100 experiments have been done by over 4,100 investigators and represent the work of over 108 regions and countries. The work going on the space station is not only there to help us with our exploration goals for how to go further into space, but also to bring back benefits for Earth and to produce a commercial marketplace in low Earth orbit. All three of these objectives, along with the international cooperation that it took to build such an amazing laboratory in space, are great examples of the objectives of the ISS program.
Kurt, we know that today's mission is critical to providing us with a steady cadence of operational flights. But why is it so important for us to have this capability from a research perspective?
That's a great question. Today's test flight brings us to the beginning of the commercial crew program, a commercial crew program which will raise our occupancy on the U.S. segment of the space station to 4 astronauts. And that 4th astronaut comes as a real premium to doing research on the space station. The tasks don't get particularly more intensive to do systems and maintenance, so that 4th astronaut, that time becomes dedicated to performing more science. In fact, enough time that it will essentially double the amount of crew time we have to perform experiments on board station. The return to U.S. soil also brings us the ability to return samples more quickly and get human samples back down to the ground more quickly as well.
Kurt, you're talking about all this great research, you're talking about scientific experiments, but what would you say to someone who's watching this and thinking, this isn't relevant to me, I'm never going to space, I don't do science? What do you say to those people?
Well, again, one of the focuses is on the ISS benefits for humanity. And for all of us who've been stuck at home during the COVID-19 pandemic, we've been wondering, wouldn't it be nice to have more bandwidth? Why does the internet slow down? Some of the research we're doing on board space station, particularly into Z-band optical fiber, is using the fact that we don't have sedimentation in a microgravity environment to develop new materials that will help us build more perfect fiber optic cables, which will allow us for better bandwidth and lower cost in implementing networks here on Earth. And then if you're not really a tech geek, maybe your interests lie more in human health. And then we have multiple experiments going on to help us develop new drugs, new treatments on board the ISS. Pharmaceutical companies are working on methods that allow us to crystallize proteins in space in a more purified and more standardized method. And this could lead to monoclonal antibody suspensions that we can treat through injection instead of a painful infusion. We also are developing studies into our capability to produce tissues and organs in space. Again, because you don't have sedimentation, there's a capability there to produce more realistic tissues that can someday possibly be used to prevent human disease.
Now, Kurt, I know they have some cargo going up with them, but I understand they plan to bring some science back.
That's right, Gary. A lot of their cargo going up with them are crew supplies and EVA supplies to support them if they have to do EVAs on board. But the cargo they'll be bringing down is science, and it comes from across the spectrum. We have student experiments in seeds that will be returning with the Crew Dragon. We also have a number of experiments that are dependent on their samples returning in frozen lockers on board the SpaceX Dragon to be able to do the science there. Those include rodent research tissues from the National Lab Rodent Research 17 mission, and also our veggie experiments, which are experiments in growing plants in space that will be needed when we go to more distant locations like the Moon and Mars.
International Space Station Chief Scientist Kurt Costello, thank you so much for your time. Let's hear now from one of the next astronauts to fly to station on a Crew Dragon, talking with Marina Jurica. Marina.
Thank you so much. I am so honored to be a part of today's momentous launch. My guest is no stranger to the International Space Station and will return there for the first time in nearly a decade for his third space flight with the Crew 1 launch expected later this year. Having logged 177 days in space from flights on the Space Shuttle Discovery to the Soyuz, JAXA astronaut Soichi Noguchi will have spent more time in space than any of his other crewmates. It is my pleasure to welcome him here with us today. Thank you so much for joining us, Soichi. Honjitsu wa arigato gozaimasu.
Wow, that's wonderful. Marina, how are you doing? Thanks for having me today. This is wonderful. Today we are celebrating the launch, so I'm happy to be here.
Thank you so much for being here with us. I am sure you have felt the excitement for today's launch, Soichi, and you will be on the next Crew Dragon flight after this one. Are you excited to launch from Kennedy Space Center again, and how are you preparing for this new vehicle?
Yes, definitely we are excited to go back to Kennedy Space Center. My first space flight was from Kennedy Space Center on the Space Shuttle Discovery. That was 15 years ago, but my memory is still fresh. I still feel the vibration of the launch, the same launch pad of 39A that the demo to go up, and the same launch pad that we will go up as a Crew 1. And our crew is getting ready for the final training phase, which will come in the coming weeks. And the mood is really high, and we are ready to go up.
And as you know, the International Space Station and space exploration is an international effort. How do you feel representing the Japanese Space Agency once again on the ISS?
Well, I think the strengths of the International Space Station is the diversity of all the participating countries, and adding a diversity is definitely gives a rigidity to the program. And the same applies to our Crew 1. Our Crew 1, we are 4 of us, but quite a different background, quite a different ethnicity, and definitely the diversity is the key word of our success to the Crew 1.
And I'm sure it will be very successful. What are you looking forward to once you get back to the ISS?
Well, this will be my third visit to the International Space Station. I'd like to see the things my colleagues keep saying, hey, you got to visit the space station again because it's getting more comfortable, more roomy, and I cannot wait to go back to my sleep station after 10 years.
And nothing beats that view, does it?
Oh, definitely. My last flight, we actually installed a big window called the cupola, and that was a big hit, obviously. This is the number one leisure time for astronauts, and I'm ready to shoot as many photos as I can this time as well.
Amazing. I will look forward to seeing those photos. I'm sure you remember exactly what it feels like in these moments right before a launch. What do you think Robert Behnken and Douglas Hurley are feeling right now as they prepare to head to the ISS?
Well, Doug and Bob's space shuttle veterans, they know the drill. They have launched. They experienced the launch before, so I think they're pretty relaxed. And so far through my training, I learned that most of the steps before the launch is quite similar to what we have in the space shuttle days. So different suit, different vehicle, but all the necessity steps to go up into the capsule should feel similar. So I'm pretty sure they are relaxed. Of course, they are very excited.
I'm sure they are. Gokatsu yaku o inori shite imasu. Honjitsu wa arigato gozaimashita. Thank you so much, Soichi, for joining us today.
Oh, Marina, you are so good. Domo arigato. And we'll both enjoy the beautiful lunch today. Thank you very much for having me. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Good luck with your launch later this year. And as the excitement builds towards launch, I will send it back to you.
Thank you, Marina. I now have the distinct pleasure of being joined by one of NASA's record-setting astronauts and a recent resident aboard the International Space Station, Christina Cook. Christina, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you, Dan.
Christina, we're coming up on 20 years of continuous human presence on the space station, and you were one of those humans. What's it like to see a new milestone like this launch unfold after so much history already?
So much history indeed. It is really just such a testament to NASA. Not only are we pushing the boundaries of knowledge and discovery and exploration, but we're pushing the boundaries on how we accomplish that mission. We're bringing in commercial partners. We're fostering a space economy. So we're making sure that we're always pushing forward, always taking that next step. I think it's such a privilege to be part of an organization that recognizes if we're not actually making steps and innovating every single time we do this, then we're not truly answering humanity's call to explore and to push those boundaries.
Christina, I know Bob and Doug are veterans themselves, but what advice do you have for Bob and Doug, given your experience as a long-duration station crew member?
Well, being able to live on board the International Space Station and work there is just such a privilege. You know, you're a steward of this amazing laboratory that's bringing so many benefits down to Earth and also learning how we can push farther into the universe. So it is quite an honor, and I think that's the main thing about how it feels to be up there for a long duration. You know, in terms of advice, Bob and Doug have been great mentors for me. They've given me advice for so many years. It's strange to be the one who could be in a position to offer them anything. But I would say that as, you know, shuttle flyers, they used to participate in missions that were really, really intense, go, go, go all the time. Long duration space flight is more of a marathon than a sprint. So I would tell them to take that moment, enjoy it, and, you know, really welcome the opportunity to have part of your mission be taking it all in and sharing that with the people that got you there.
Thanks again, Christina. Always a pleasure to hear from you and fantastic words. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you. My pleasure.
So once again, once Bob and Doug arrive at the station, they'll be greeted by astronaut Chris Cassidy, but before we do that, let's toss to a briefing.
Hello, everyone. I'm astronaut Chris Cassidy, commander of Expedition 63 on board the International Space Station, flying 250 miles above the Earth. Like you, I'm excited about today's launch and the possibilities it will bring to America and to the world. But also, I'm very excited that two close friends will be arriving and joining the crew. I had the privilege of flying with Doug Hurley on both of our first shuttle missions back in 2009. Together, we came to the International Space Station and helped construct the amazing facility that it is today. Although this will be my first mission with Bob, it was my honor to follow him as the chief of the office when he left back in 2015 to begin training for this amazing mission. Personally, I've been very fortunate to fly in two different spacecraft. Launching from America on the Shuttle, and most recently launching from Kazakhstan in the Soyuz. But I can't tell you how exciting it is to know that we're once again launching Americans from the coast of Florida. And finally, here's a story I'd like to share with you. Back in 1981, John Young and Bob Crippen launched on Space Shuttle Columbia, the very first space shuttle flight, marking the last time we flew Americans on a brand new vehicle.
434, Mike, Roger.
With them, they flew an American flag, representing America's technical prowess.
Roger, roll, Atlanta.
30 years later, that same flag was flown to the International Space Station. This flag remains here today, waiting for Bob and Doug. Our flag means so many things to our country, and this small piece of America represents what we'll be able to achieve together. We'll never stop exploring. And so Bob and Doug can take this very special flag home to Earth, where it awaits its next journey to the cosmos. In a few years, the first Orion crew will take this flag with it around the moon. All of this starts today. I'll be watching outside the window along with everyone else in America and around the world. I can't wait to look out the window and see my friends on close approach. Go Falcon 9, go Dragon, and go Bob and Doug. I'll see you soon.
And that was a very special message from NASA astronaut Chris Cassidy, right now the lone American aboard the International Space Station, so he will be ready and waiting to welcome Bob and Doug when they arrive tomorrow, if liftoff happens today, a little later tomorrow morning. The countdown now stands at T-minus 1 hour, 25 minutes, 54 seconds, and counting until launch. And we'd like to share with you just how much has happened here at Kennedy Space Center since the last time we had a crew on the pad launching from here. As you can imagine, the end of the shuttle era was a bittersweet moment for many people across this spaceport. But in the end, we knew we were striving for this day, and here we are. Joining us now is Kennedy Space Center's Deputy Director, Janet Petro, on the comeback we've seen across Florida's Space Coast. She's with Daryl Nail now at OSB2. Daryl?
Yeah, thank you, Marie. Janet, you were just telling me you were there at the crew walkout. Tell me a little bit about what you saw between the astronauts and their families.
So it was very historic. It was very emotional. So when Doug and Bob first came out of the doors, of course, a cheer went up from everybody. The Vice President was there, Elon was there, the crew families was there, and of course, Bob, myself, and the rest of the center leadership was there to cheer them on. But then, when they came out and then they went to the families and Bob Benkin said, virtual hug, and he shouted out, virtual hug, and he did this motion, and of course his child also did that virtual hug, and so I guess that's the tradition of doing a virtual hug with the families. And then they, then they walked and got in the Tesla, either side, and the family walked right up to the window of the Tesla and were talking, having a private last moment with their father, hand on the window. It was very emotional. I had tears in my eyes. I don't know how many other people had tears in their eyes, but it was really a special, emotional moment, and everybody was, of course, wishing them well. A lot of I love yous, a lot of Godspeeds, a lot of Ad Astra, take care, all of that. So it was very special.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And in the context of why it's so important, Janet, you remember, you've been here since 2007.
Yep.
You were here at 2011 when Shuttle Atlantis came to wheel stop.
I've talked to my uncle and father who worked out here. Layoff notices went out like the next day when the shuttle came to a stop. It was a very sad time. Bob Cabana, the director here, called it depressing. Tell me about that time and how far we've come.
Yeah, so as you note, it was the end of a very iconic program. A lot of people had spent their entire career working on the Space Shuttle program. So 135 flights, all of them launching from Launch Complex 39, many from 39A, where we're going to be launching from today, and then returning back. At the shuttle landing facility, those two iconic sonic booms was something that all along the Space Coast people really resonated with, really felt in their hearts and looked forward to. So it was a very sad time, but I will tell you that 30-year program, we had planned for it. The workforce was incredible. There was a lot of people who, as I said, spent their entire career here, and they wanted to safely fly that shuttle out, and then they retired. There was also another large group of people that just wanted to put on their resume that they had been privileged to work on the space shuttle. So the workforce I was incredibly proud of because they were resilient, they were dedicated, they were committed to safely flying out that shuttle. They didn't skip any steps, and regardless, as you said, that they knew they were getting their layoff notices. I think it landed on a Wednesday. They were getting their layoff notice on a Friday. They were in it till the end to make sure we safely flew it out. And of course, we had 14,000 workers out here then, which we have a lot fewer here today. And of course, our guest operations, you remember those last shuttle flights.
All stations come up for section 54.57, Chief Engineer Technical Poll for launch escape arming and propellant load.
Launch director on countdown.net. Closeout team has departed the pad, and the hazard area is beyond the roadblocks. Field lead has started. Stage 1, RP1 lead started. And stage 2, RP1 lead started.
Dragon, SpaceX for prop.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're going to equalize the pressures in the common manifolds just to raise them a little bit. So we will be momentarily cycling the tank isolation valves. I just wanted to let you know for awareness.
Okay, we appreciate that, Jay.
Dragon SpaceX valve cycling is complete, expected behavior. And wanted to hear if you were able to hear those.
We actually did, Jay. We were just making a comment about that. I heard some clicking, and Bob watched it on the systems display, so absolutely.
Copy all. Dragon, SpaceX, we are at T-minus 1 hour. You are go for Section 6. When ready, report go for launch.
SpaceX Dragon, we'll put Section 6 in work.
Copy.
SpaceX Dragon, Bob and I are go for launch.
Copy, go for launch. Next up will be the go, no go full at T-minus 45.
We copy, we're holding in step 6.5.
Launch director in the countdown net. We're ready for a poll for propellant load and launch. Please review your launch commit criteria. Again, this is to review and confirm no violation of launch commit criteria. We are tracking one issue with weather still. And I think we'll need to track that all the way down to launch to clear that. This poll is also go for arming and launch escape system and go for propellant load.
And this is the on countdown net reporting that the technical poll was completed. All systems are proceeding. We're monitoring the weather as LD briefed. We're also looking at a watch item on a hydraulics QD rod ring. Ring pressure will come up at minus 8 minutes 30 seconds, and we'll be able to verify decay rate. No concerns at this time. Everything's reading nominal, but watching that item. No other constraints on Falcon 9 or ground systems.
Stage 2 RB1 bleed is complete. ECS transition to helium started. Yes, launch director in the countdown net. Poll is complete, and we have a go to proceed with propellant load. Launch control, proceed with swing into crew arm. Arming crew arm movement for T-minus 45 minutes. Thank you, launch control. A reminder in control room on hold and launch escape protocol. For non-urgent no-go conditions, brief CE or LD, and it will approve aborting the launch auto sequence and proceed to launch abort. For urgent issues affecting the safety of the operation, operators shall call hold on the countdown net. Launch control will abort the launch auto-sequence immediately and proceed into the launch abort auto-sequence. Operators shall also advise the launch director whether structural breakup or fire is imminent or occurring per Dragon manual escape flight rules. Remainder on fire alarm instructions. Here in Firing Room 4, in the event of a fire alarm, key operators, previously briefed, will remain at their post while the alarm is evaluated. In the event that personal safety is threatened, we will evacuate to the south-facing emergency exit, which leads directly outside. One final reminder, we'll be arming the launch escape system momentarily. Need all personnel, please stay in your seats from now through orbit insertion and Dragon separation from the second stage.
Crew access arm recheck has started.
And for the launch team, we're continuing to track 3 weather rule violations that are continuing to be evaluated by the launch weather officer. Expecting those rules to clear at 2020 UTC, or 20 minutes after the top of the hour.
Crew arm in position for launch.
Dragon, SpaceX, with the arm call, you are go for Section 7, close visors and arm launch escape system.
Dragon Cappies, go for Section 7.
Stage 1, fuel bleed is complete.
SpaceX Dragon in 7.2, our visors are closed and we're arming the launch escape system.
Copy.
Launch escape system is verified armed.
Service section per switching to GN2. F9 tanks venting for propellant load. Propellant load has started.
Stage 1 locks and RP1 flow rates are nominal. Stage 1 cryohelium load has started.
Dragon, SpaceX for a weather update.
Go ahead, SpaceX.
Yeah, we're currently just evaluating a constraint on the field mill rule, which looks at lightning energy dissipation. We expect to have an update at about T-minus 20, and more information there on whether we would be able to continue into the prop load or scrub at that time.
Okay, Jay, thanks for the update. We appreciate it.
Copy. So I'll give you some more words in about 6 minutes.
Dragon Captain.
Stage 2 cryohelium load started.
Lock strong back trail started. Stage 2 RP1 load complete.
And Dragon SpaceX on weather, we're still not looking good currently. LD is still having some discussions. Expect an update from LD in a few minutes.
Okay, Dragon, copy.
Launch director in the countdown net. We continue to violate a couple different weather rules that we now do not expect to clear in time to allow for a launch today. We'll go ahead and end today's launch attempt. Launch control, if you would end the launch auto sequence and proceed into the launch abort auto sequence, please.
Launch abort has started.
And Dragon SpaceX, unfortunately, we are not going to launch today. You are go for 5.100 launch scrub.
5.100, it was a good effort by the teams, and we understand, and we'll meet you there.
Copy all.
And for clarity, we are scrubbed for today's launch attempt. Dragon SpaceX for propellant offload status.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, sir. So we're at 75% on the fuel tank first stage. LOX was up to 69%. On the second stage, we're at 97% for...
With 2 astronauts on board has just been scrubbed, postponed due to inclement weather around the Cape Canaveral launch site in Florida. Liftoff had been scheduled for 4:33 Eastern Time, just moments from now. But storm clouds and lightning in the area has forced a delay. The launch Saturday. Tom Costello is at the Kennedy Space Center now with the very latest. Tom?
Well, this just happened within the past 90 seconds or so. We were within 17 minutes of lifting off here on Launch Pad 39A, the historic launch pad that sent Apollo astronauts and Space Shuttle astronauts into space. The rocket fully fueled with 2 astronauts, Bob Behnken and Doug Hurley, both strapped in and ready to go. But the weather has been dicey all day today. And in fact, we've been dealing with squalls and high wind and rain and thunder and lightning. And it was lightning just literally minutes before that 17 marker, lightning off to my left. That probably was the defining moment. They had to pull the plug on this. They have very strict weather parameters. They cannot violate these weather criteria because you're opening yourself up to any number of problems as the rocket is lifting off and headed for the space station. And so now, out there on Launch Pad 39A, the astronauts are still strapped in, and they're going through the very meticulous process of taking the fuel off of the rocket. That's going to take some time, as you know, to do that safely, and then eventually they will take both of these astronauts off of the SpaceX rocket. That means now that the next attempt to launch is going to be on Saturday and then Sunday. And interestingly, the launch director said if we could just have 10 more minutes, we might be able to wait this out. The trouble is they have a very, very tight window. They have to launch at exactly that second so that they can eventually intersect and head right up to the International Space Station. They had hoped to hit that at 11:30 a.m. tomorrow Eastern Time, and now that's going to have to wait. By the way, this comes just as President Trump had pulled in behind the camera. There's a building. President Trump had just arrived to watch this liftoff, and Vice President Pence is also here. So a disappointing day. You could almost predict it, though, Lester, because we've been dealing with volatile weather all day, and we're probably really in the best weather we've had all day. The lull of the day is right now, but lightning off to my left, and that's probably what ended up being the defining factor for canceling this liftoff today. Lester?
Yeah, safety number one, of course. Tom, thank you. Al Roker's been following the weather at the launch site. And Al, it wasn't just the launch site. They've been watching weather up much of the East Coast as an important factor in all this.
That's right. We had a tropical storm this morning, Tropical Storm Bertha. But as Tom mentioned, and we've been talking about this all day, there was a 60% chance of these thunderstorms happening. And so a 60% chance of this launch not happening right now. Take a look on the radar and you'll see there's Bertha right now, 65 miles northwest of Charleston, South Carolina. And as that system pushes off, here's the latest on the radar. As we look, you can see, here they are. And look to the west. This is just past Orlando. We are watching this line of showers and thunderstorms starting to fire up. And in fact, here's the live radar. And we've been watching this line build up in the last 20, 30 minutes. So I don't know, even if they had had another 10 or 15 minutes, Lester, whether they would have made it. This is very volatile. You see the lightning strikes out over the ocean and lightning strikes back to the west. It was dicey from this morning. And unfortunately, it looks like now the weather caught up with them. But as you said, safety first. It's not worth risking the lives of those astronauts and all the work that's gone into this launch. Lester?
Yeah, space will still be there on Saturday. Joining us now from Houston is astronaut Michael Fink, a spaceflight veteran who as a mission specialist aboard the Shuttle Endeavour in May 2011 for the second to last ever shuttle mission. Colonel, great to see you again. Thanks for joining us. Tell me what it is like to sit there waiting for a launch that may be a go or no-go right up to the last few minutes.
Hey, Lester, good to see you again. And just wanted to say that, yeah, on STS-134, the second to last shuttle flight, we were halfway to the launch pad, and we had to turn our Astro van around because we scrubbed. So I know Bob and Doug are disappointed. I know their families are a little disappointed, but everybody knows it's for the right thing. And so they're going to wait till a few things happen so they can safely exit the spacecraft, and they're going to go back into quarantine. will stay in quarantine and looking for a launch on Saturday around 3:22 p.m. And sometimes it's best just to live to fight another day.
Yeah, the defueling that's going on right now, if that's the right phrase, this is potentially a little dicey in itself, is it not?
Well, it's explosive fuels, right? So yes, but we've practiced this, and SpaceX. A very nice thing with them and the Falcon 9 is they practiced this maneuver before. They load the propellant on typically very late compared to what we did with Space Shuttle and other rockets. And they densify a little bit so they make it almost slushy, their propellant, so it's extra cold. But they also know how to get it back out and make it safe so that the crew can exit the spacecraft. This was one of the first things we asked them when they proposed their plan for densified propellant, how we would handle scrubs. And today they're going to execute it by the book.
All right. Well, I know you were excited to see it. A lot of us are. But as I mentioned a moment ago, Space will be there on Saturday. So we'll just wait for that moment. Colonel, thank you for joining us. And to repeat, the launch of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket with 2 astronauts aboard has been postponed due to bad weather. Another attempt expected this Saturday. I'll have complete details, and we see you a bit later tonight on NBC Nightly News. For now, I'm Lester Holt, NBC News.
You're watching NBC News Now. We've got some breaking news.
If they do go back to their jobs, they want to make sure that they are protected.